a detail-oriented account, and so it's really hard for us as auditors to dive in without spending a lot of time and resources and to tell you which fund is paying the general fund's 523. We just know that it's not coming from its own resources, that it's borrowing money from the banks of these other funds. The debt service fund had money owed to it of $241,000. The street maintenance fund of $1,077,000. All in all, they're all listed right here. The other big one is the liability related to the 4A corporation of $796,000. So the pool cash fund and restricted resources has been making the bond payments and related to the interlocal agreement that the city has with 4A, and that's what a lot of that is, an accumulation over time, and that's the balance as of 9/30 that it is borrowing from this pool of money. So those are the two largest ones, the general fund and the 4A. The EDC also has a rather large balance. That one is related to salaries of prior directors and other costs that the city has floated for the city or for the EDC. Are there any questions on anything I covered here on this page?
I have a question. So what you're saying that 523,000, you don't know where it was borrowed from?
Correct.
Thank you.
And how are we supposed to figure that one out?
Yeah.
Well, you know, so imagine a pot of money up in the air, and each fund is claiming on that pot of money. As deposits come in, that claim goes up. As expenses go out, that claim goes down. So it's really hard to tell which fund is borrowing from which fund because the deposits and expenses and invoices of the deposits and checks are making that money move by fund. So we just know that we have these funds in the negative are related to the pool cash. So our claim on cash is negative for these funds. Therefore, we know that there's balances in the other funds that are floating for these funds.
So that's why you probably suggest that each one is separated?
Yes, and I'll go over that. If each one is separated, then it creates a paper trail that you can kind of manage it a little better and control the spending because you won't have funds in certain fund or bank accounts to continue the expenses.
Okay, how many years have you told us to do that?
The pool cash.
On
Separate
not borrowing from
accounts.
Peter to pay Paul?
This will be
That
the
it was
first. This will be
illegal.
the first year that we've done.
Last year you had that also. That's what you said.
I'd have to look at the notes, but most likely. But I'd have to look at the note, last year's audit file and make sure.
So you haven't looked at it, you just came in and that's it?
I know this number because I did the audit for this year. However, I'm not sure on last year's number. I did not do the audit for last year. Yeah, another engagement team did.
Because by looking at some of the numbers right here, I mean, we make more than 50,000 in the
Yeah, I mean,
motel. I mean, is that a number that we're dreaming up, or?
by looking at this information, you can tell this isn't just 1 year of activity. This is probably accumulation of years. So,
Excuse me.
sure.
So, this money that is coming out from other accounts, did y'all find that any of the other accounts were negative because money was taken from those accounts to put in another account?
Yeah, and that's what's listed here on page 39 on the right, the due to. These are all negative claim on cash accounts. So these are all accounts that are funds that are borrowing from that pool money. They don't have the deposits to absorb what they borrowed.
And what amount is that?
To the tune of $2 million right there at the bottom. The total amount that's been borrowed and floated around the city's funds. Any other questions on? The last note I was going to cover today was note 8, and further solidifies our stance on the going concern for the city. It's on page 43. I'll just read. Over the past 5 years, the city's general fund has budgeted for and operated a negative change in fund balance, excluding transfers from the other funds. The transfers from the other funds are budgeted and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. However, it's an indication that the general fund is relying on other funds' resources and the borrowing of cash to maintain its operations. So during the fiscal year, after transfers, the general fund experienced a negative fund balance change of $254,000, as we covered the page before, bringing the balance to $358,000 in the negative. And then below is management's response and how they plan on kind of getting out of this deficit for the general fund. And that's through continuing the zero-based budget, controlling expenditures, assessing their operations for efficiencies and where they can improve. We've looked at current year financial statement information and current year budget. We still hold the going concern comment because we just don't know if the general fund is going to operate enough to fund back its restricted borrowings. That makes sense. Right now, as of the information we've received, the general fund is in the positive of $70,000 before transfers. That's good, but we still have 3 months of operations to continue. So $70,000 isn't going to repay the $500,000 that it owes the other funds. So that's why we kind of stuck to the going concern.
So what's your suggestion? Other than the,
Well, management has written came up with some policies and procedures on how to get out of it. So,
for how many years?
this is year 2. This budget will be year 1. Year 1. Yeah.
Well, last year we were in a deficit, and the year before we were in deficit.
The year before you weren't. Last year you dipped into the negative, and that's when management responded and is implementing a zero-based budget for this coming year.
But historically, can you tell the council in reference to deficit pattern prior to historically?
I wrote some general figures down. So historically, dating back to 2014, and I'll focus on the before transfers because we want to see how the general fund's operating without the assistance from the other funds, right? So before transfers, our general fund in 2014 is negative $92,000, 2015 negative $67,000, 2016 negative $476,000, 2017 negative $1,026,000, and this year negative $954,000. We did have budgeted transfers throughout those years, but really in 2016 was the year the transfers weren't enough to cover those deficiencies and revenues under expenditures.
Where was that at that you were reading?
It's just notes I brought.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, there's really no historical information other than 1 year look back.
What you're reading to us.
In the financial statements that you have, there's only a 1 year look back in the MD&A, and it's on a full accrual basis, so it's not even just the general fund. So yeah, there's really no comparative in these financial statements for the general fund itself. You'd have to look at prior audits and where the general fund stood.
I know that in previous years your company has had a overview from finance. Are you prepared for that?
I am, and those are in the stapled document that I was going to go over, but if there's any more questions on the bound document, I'll field those before moving into the stapled document.
Okay, how long has this audit been taking you?
So we started the audit, I believe, in March, and we wrapped up pretty much last week when we came forward with the audit committee.
Because I remember when we hired y'all again, We asked how long does audit normally take? He said 2 to 4 weeks.
Right.
So
2 to 4 weeks of actual time worked. So like schedules, like our schedule and management schedule, we come out, maybe management's not ready, or we're not ready because we have other clients that we're committed to. So it's kind of a dance that we have to do with management on scheduling.
okay,
But it usually takes them 2 to 4 weeks to audit, like time-wise,
okay.
of a team of about 3.
So now we've exceeded that for with a few months. Is that at our cost? Are we having to pay extra?
We have not change order billed y'all. So no, we stuck to the
So
contract.
there is not going to be a change order bill?
No, no.
So it's, what are y'all billing us?
I don't have that information. I don't have the engagement letter on me.
I have a question. So why does it take that long? It's almost 4 months.
Right. Well, the findings that we identified has caused a little bit of lag, but so I can cover those if you'd like next.
Yes, please.
When you see the finding, you'll
Question
understand that
before you
it takes a little time. Sure.
So you said, earlier you said 358,000 as a deficit, and then just right now you had said we are at 954
In the change.
in the change.
Yes. So that's the change from last year to this year before transfers. So we had the 700,000, so that brought your change to 250. Yeah.
Looking at several of the numbers, I mean, just from looking at our budget and how much money's coming in, and, I mean, they don't seem to match. Looks like your numbers are just thrown in, 50,000, 200,000, you know, it's not, they don't look like the actual, or budget.
There's a report there. You want me? I can cover that on page 55.
Page 39.
Page 55 is the bound document. So the first column is our original budget that we got early on, based on the management's best estimates. The final budget is after amendments. So throughout the year, situations arise and adjustments are made to the original budget. So you can see in the middle there, if we focus on the revenues minus expenses, we budgeted revenues of 3.6 million, and we budgeted expenses of 4.6. So that's $1 million shortfall that we knew we were going in the hole, based on the adopted budget and approved amended budget. So we knew we were going in the hole $1 million before transfers. Then, so if you look at the actual of 954, we really did better by 52,000 than what we projected. We did have the transfer in, like I said, that was budgeted, 700,000 from the other funds. So overall, we were budgeting to go in the hole $410,000, but we only went in the hole 358. So it was a positive $52,000 from what we budgeted to do.
Budgeted to go in the hole.
Any other questions before we go into his findings?
So I'm going to start with the one in the middle where it says accounting policies, kind of in italics.
What page?
It's in the staple documents that were accompanying that report. If you need an extra copy, we have. So in the middle there's the accounting policies and qualitative aspects of accounting practices. So we'll start with that letter and then we'll go on to the second one. So this is our required communication. Is there?
Which one, accounting,
The one with the accounting policies in italics, like in the middle?
Where it says ADA.
Okay.
that's your, you gotta have another. What's that one?
So again, the first paragraph is basically what we're engaged to do. This letter is a required communication between us, the auditors, and those charging governance, which is City Council for the City of Floresville. We're engaged to audit the financial statements of the City of Floresville. The next paragraph, accounting policies. We're required to inform you if there were any new accounting policies adopted. As mentioned in our opinion, we did adopt GASB statement number 75 over the post-employment benefit related to the retiree health insurance that the city offers its retirees. The next paragraph is accounting estimates. They are an integral part of these financial statements, and we reviewed them, and we had found no issues with the estimates that are presented in accordance with this other bound document, and they're reasonable in relation to the financial statements as a whole. Difficulties encountered in performing the audit, if we had any, we'd be required to communicate that to you. We had no difficulties in performing the audit. Management was able to give us everything we needed in a timely fashion. The corrected and uncorrected misstatements, management has made all the corrections. I do want to highlight one that because of auditing procedures we performed over the several accounts, the accounts payable had to be adjusted by $460,000 across all the funds, and the retainage payable had to be adjusted by $423,000, which are a material amount for your financial statements by fund and in total. So we were just required to report that to you. But we do have a finding related to those figures as well that I'll cover further.
So you have to fix that, or?
Yes. We identified, that's the amount we identified through our auditing procedures.
And you will explain it later?
Yes. If we had any disagreements with management over an accounting issue, or if anything like that, we would have to let you know what that disagreement was and the conclusion of that. We had no such disagreements. Management has provided us with a management representation letter. Basically means that they've given us everything we needed to perform the audit and issue our opinion. Management's consultation with other independent accounts. That's if the management had went opinion shopping to other auditors. Our standards, the AICPA require that auditor to contact us, the auditing firm engaged for the audit, to get full circumstances. It's called opinion shopping, kind of like a second opinion, but that auditor would have to get our relevant facts and circumstances before giving his opinion. To my knowledge, that didn't happen. On page 3, the next page, we did audit the city's investment policy in accordance with the Public Funds Investment Act, and the city did comply with the Public Funds Investment Act. It basically means that the investment officers appointed are adequately trained and up to date on their training certificates, as well as the investments the city holds aren't in violation of that act. There's certain investments that the city can invest in, and the city is not conflicting with the act in related to the types of investments. The next letter, the next staple document. This is another letter that we issued in accordance with our auditing standards. Basically describes what a deficiency is and a material weakness in internal controls. And I'm just going to go over the material weaknesses and the significant deficiencies that we identified during our audit and our recommendation for management. Like I mentioned, we consider the below a material weakness in internal controls. The accounts payable reconciliation, so there was $460,000 that was identified by our auditing procedures that needed to be accrued back to fiscal year 2018. So these are cash outflows in 19 that were coded to that year and budget against that budget, and we had to accrue it back to 18 across all the funds, but to the tune of $460,000. So that was identified by us as part of our auditing procedures. So we recommend the city perform a review of its open purchase orders at year end, and also perform a search of invoices received subsequent to year end prior to payment to determine the right accounting period to report them in the right budget period to report them in. Continuing on page.
This was also a finding in the prior year, correct?
Yes. Let me see.
Number 1.
Yes, there was.
Yes. It's a repeat.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. I had to look in our prior audit, yes, it is. It was. Note 2, it's not a material amount, but we did think classify it as a material weakness. It's related to the Civic Center rental payments, and it totaled $11,000. It's a material amount for that fund because that's the 4A fund, and that's the fund that is in the hole, one of the most in the hole. So we did want to highlight that there's cash receipts that were receipted, but the event hadn't happened yet by revenue recognition principles. We can't realize that revenue until the event happens.
What was the revenue?
It was $11,820
That's for the whole year?
for the whole year, from what we identified. And we reviewed numerous contracts, which came up to that number. Another material weakness was the construction retainage payable. Again, USDA is awarding based on invoices and procedures to make payments to the contractors. We detected that retainage payable amounts of $423,000 were not accrued back to the fiscal year September 30th, 2018. So we recommend the city review all construction payment applications at year end and properly record the retainage withheld by the contractors, by the city, for those contractor payments.
So it went unrecorded, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So how did y'all find it if it wasn't?
So we look at subsequent payments related to all your bank accounts. And we identified this check that was made to the contractor, the name escapes me, but to the contractor that was going through the USDA process for approval. They approved it, they made the payment in October, however, and they accrued back the construction related to that. However, the retainage that was withheld on the actual application was not also recorded. So the contractor absorbs costs that it puts into the project as of a certain date, and then it withholds 5%, in accordance with the bid document that was awarded to the city, between the city and the contractor. It withholds 5% for ongoing contingencies, so the city doesn't pay that final amount until it's happy with the project. So it's a safety net for y'all, but that amount was spent by the contractor, so by accounting principles, you incurred a liability by that amount, even though you didn't pay it yet. There's a liability incurred that you will owe that money at the end of the contract. Make sense?
Thank you.
Number 4, the pool cash. Year-end borrower funds through the pool cash account from restricted, it's important to note, restricted resources to fund city operations by $1.6 million. So the total was $2 million roughly, but roughly $400,000 wasn't restricted funds. So only $1.69 million was from restricted funding sources.
And that's not supposed to happen.
No, yeah. So we recommend that the cash from the restricted sources should not be used to temporarily fund other unrestricted operations of the city. The next one is a repeat comment from last year as well, and it's a compliance finding and internal control. We consider it a significant deficiency, not a material weakness. Y'all have a verbal policy on how y'all are doing y'all's procurement. However, in accordance with single audit, which y'all get federal funds from USDA, you're required to have a purchasing manual, a procurement manual documented on how you go about your procurement. So it is a compliance finding, just that you haven't formalized one. So we just recommend a policy by management be brought forward to you on the procurement policies that the city has in place.
But you recommended that last year.
Yeah, so this is a repeat comment. Number 2, exceeded approved budgets. So noted that the city had expenses that exceeded the general funds department amended budget, totaling $18,000. So we overspent our budget. Most of that's related to like timing of accruals and stuff like that. So
How did you come up with that? Because at first, when we had that meeting, it was 92,000.
Yes, so we did have an amendment that we did not pick up in the general fund, and Connie provided the support for that, so we were able to adjust that number. So we missed about $70,000 of approved by y'all, a approved amendment, so.
How does that happen? How do you miss something like that, if information is provided to you?
He was just overlooked by the person inputting into the schedule, into the budget's actual schedule. But we went back after our meeting and looked at it, and we found that there was a missing account line that we didn't add into the departments.
You didn't have the information to add it?
We did, we just overlooked it, and then we contacted finance and figured out that, yeah, that number needs to change, because we had it amended. So kind of just carried forward what the original was, we didn't carry forward the amendment numbers.
So in other words, y'all caught y'all's mistake.
Yeah, through our second review.
Okay, well, that's
Third
what
review.
y'all do, a second review.
Our recommendation is just that finance department and management follow proper procedures and disallow any expenditures that exceed the budget unless the budget amendment is approved by city council. And then the final compliance finding that we found is again a kind of similar to the procurement policy. We had financial reporting policies and procedures; those that need to be documented in accordance with the Single Audit Act, and OMB requires that. Y'all do have a verbal way of or understanding of how you're going to operate, how you're going to go out and get grants, how you're going to process payroll, process purchasing, etc. However, that needs to be formally documented when receiving federal funds. It's a new compliance requirement that needs to happen. So we recommend that the city draft a financial reporting policy that reflects that. And the procurement and the financial reporting can be combined into one document. We've seen that in our practice. The next few comments are less severe than a significant deficiency by our judgment. However, we did want to communicate that to you as well, these next few findings. So, segregation of duties, the accounts payable. So the city's bookkeeper has the ability, it's not her normal function, but she does have the ability, based on the rights in the system, to enter information into the accounts payable module, print checks, and edit the vendor master file. So a combination of those three functions is a high risk for the city. So we recommend that an employee other than the bookkeeper handle all changes and additions to the vendor master file, so eliminating that access.
I thought we were doing that already, that's why we had hired somebody else to help
So,
out.
like I said, it is in practice, however, the capabilities for her to do it exist.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of going into the system, financial system, and unchecking that box, that she can't do that. So whenever she logs in, she has access to do things and access not to do things.
Was she told this before?
I'm not sure, I mean, we told them at our meetings.
Thank you.
So.
We had that last year, that's what, on the checks accountable.
Thank you.
Other finding number 2 is bank statements with check images. This is really just a control procedure just to make sure that the person signing the checks is the authorized signer of that check. We can no longer rely on the bank as part of our internal controls. So the bank knows who the signatories are on the account. However, when we're auditing invoices and looking at checks, we need to see the individual signing that check and making sure that they're authorized to sign that check. And there's no overlap of responsibilities that could create another risk. So we just recommend that the city request from their financial institution monthly check images on their bank statements going forward. The final one is on expense authorizations. So we tested 80 expense transactions across all the funds, and we noted that 22 of those purchase orders were not approved and authorized in accordance with the city's verbal policy. So any purchases over $7,000 requires a signature approval by the city comptroller and the city manager. So 22 of those that met that threshold, of the 80 that we selected, 22 of them met that threshold and didn't have both. Some had city comptroller, some had city manager. So we just recommend that all
So, 80 was just some that y'all picked out at random.
sample,
Do you know
yes.
more or less, can you give me an estimate of how many there was altogether?
Our audit evidence is 22, so I don't know. We didn't extrapolate to figure out what the real number is, but we tested
You
80.
just picked 80?
We picked 80. Well, we originally picked 25, and then we picked additional ones because we started seeing a trend. So we started sampling with a low number, but then as things like these start accumulating, we say, okay, well, let's dive in and see if this is a recurring problem or just, hey, one or two happened. So we pulled more checks, and so 22 of those checks that met the threshold weren't in line with the policies and procedures that were explained to us.
But I have a question on that. One, I mean, you're assuming 80, is that what you're saying?
No, we actually physically tested 80 transactions, 80 checks across all the funds.
The 22 were not,
22 that met the threshold. 22 met the threshold of the $7,000 requirement that requires 2 signatures. And
with
20
one signature.
and only 22 of them had 1 signature.
But I understood just what you were saying a while ago, that when Mr. Jimenez asked a question about how many, and you said 80 that you found or you saw or what?
We tested 80.
They only tested 80. There might be 5,000 checks.
Yeah,
Okay, I just need to understand.
Oh, yeah, so like, I'm sure the city issues, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they issue tons of checks. We just sampled 80.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, first 80 they grabbed, that's what they checked.
Okay.
It was split across the we also noted several expenses that were split across different funds that did not include authorizing signatures of those departments. So we get a check from, for instance, we get a utility check and we allocate it across the different departments. Don't hold me to that utility. I'm not sure if that's going on, but just as an example. So some of it gets allocated to the different departments in the city. So that number was being just flat, allocated, but then the departments that are in charge of their budget weren't approving that allocation. That makes sense. So it was hitting their budget, but it wasn't getting.
So in other words, if I'm the water department and you're paying the water, should they have a true number of what came in? Is that what you're getting at? So that some of those water fund checks were going to sewer?
No, so like an electric check for electric
Okay.
bill comes into the city. It's $1,000. Well, we were allocating $100 to each department, and each department head wasn't approving that $100 that was hitting their budget. It was just being allocated to their budget. Does that make sense?
Is that because of the general pool that's used?
No.
Part of it, yeah.
Right.
That's the way you can do that. Yeah. So we recommend that all expenses are properly authorized through the account coding and a signature of a required city employee over those funds prior to payment.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On that authorization, do you think it should come to council for passage to a certain?
It's already at 50,000.
Yeah,
Right, but-
yeah, y'all have a
A
threshold.
list, right, I understand that, but like monthly, so that way we know exactly what's coming into us.
You should be getting a finance report, right? that
But we
shows-
are, but it's not in code. It's, they could put in whatever number.
Okay.
Just like some of these numbers that are in here right now, those aren't true numbers.
in here, in our audit report, or?
Yeah, so like, for example, the hotel motel, you got 50,000, you got 11,000 from the event center. That's not a true number. It should be more.
Could be more.
No, it is more.
Okay.
Usually that's what's transferred in, not
Yeah,
necessarily
yeah, the 50,000 from hotel motel is what's transferred out of the hotel motel into the general.
We get more. We get more.
Yeah, it speaks to the revenue.
You know what,
Already did some.
take back that statement, it should be coming up to us, they should be taking care of it.
Any other comments or questions concerning the audit? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thanks to the city manager, they helped me put this together. We're here, like I said, longer than we wanted to be, but we were here for roughly 4 or 5 weeks, off and on, so, takes a lot of work to put this together and manage the funds, so, to thank them for their hard work on helping us pull this together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As a request, we are now moving on to item 5A, executive session in accordance with the Texas Government Code of Chapter 551. Councilwoman Cantu has requested this.
I'll make a motion to go back.
We have a motion to.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Jimenez. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. We will go into executive session at 7:30. We will be back as soon as we can.